I wanted to show you a haircut that's pre-cut, and this is long hair we're working with. So I wanted to just put two graphic lines, one in the bottom, one in the fringe, okay? Because fringes can be quite impactful for long hair. And then what I did was had a couple of breaks just in the front and a soft little internal layer in the back. Because the hair's long, I thought I'd do that prior. I'll talk you through it in a second. And then I also, even me, who's not a colourist, used some of our new Crea Bolds, which were, they're like a colour conditioner, like a direct dye, just at the basin, and just kind of pulled it through the hair. I mixed two of the colours together, like predominantly this pastel lavender. You can see what colours they're aiming to kind of be. So I used quite a lot of this with a tiny dash of that. Just pulled it, combed it all the way through the hair, combed it through, rinsed it off. So super easy and quick, took me like 10 minutes. But I wanted to just create, again, what I do is more street style, more lived in. So I wanted the colour to kind of just have a little hue. I didn't want it to be too strong or too perfect. If I wanted it to be perfect, I wouldn't have done it. But because I wanted it just to have a bit of a vision, and this also happens when I'm shooting a lot, is I need to think fast and think, okay, how can I create a look out of this? And these were just colour conditioners in a way, so they do kind of, what is it, 10 washes?
Yeah,
like
up to 10 washes.
Up to 10 washes, they're out. So they're great for you guys to play around with, to incorporate a bit more interest into the colours. What I want to do is show you, Rami, now how I've prepared her, I've dried her, I'll talk you through how I've cut it, and you'll see the colour. And then I want to just take her on a little bit of a journey. I wanted to kind of show you guys what happens when I'm on a fashion week or on an editorial set and they say, okay, change the hair. Like, how am I going to change it? What am I going to do? So I need to think fast. And I want to show you just a really simple styling, but something that totally transforms the look, the way the hair moves, how it feels, how she looks. And I wanted you to kind of watch that journey. And it's definitely something that you guys can go and do. It's not too scary or too difficult. I wanted to really keep everything simple so that you guys are like, right, I want to have a crack at that. And sometimes the simplest things make the most difference. So let's welcome on Rami. Okay, so she's super cool anyway, which helps. And I wanted to just show you kind of what's happened. So we've worked with two base shapes, two lines, two edges. So super sharp line through the base. Again, you know, this can be incorporated in your classic technique, just working in sections through the hair and just making sure that you don't sort of cut the hair too straight or rounded. Try and keep it a little bit sort of squarer so that you get these nice sort of little points at the front here, which just keeps it looking a bit more modern. And then we worked in the fringe. So you can see just by opening up the face just enough, I didn't want it to be too dramatic. And then we just put these little soft, more broken edges just in the front to give us a little bit of interest here. So we have this graphic line, the graphic line in the base, and then we just have these little breaks in the front. And then also, just in the back here, I use like a little disconnected area just in here to kind of add, and this was literally just like a section of hair, like a veil that we took in and just chopped out just to add a little bit of interest. So what that does is mean that when I kind of move the hair and tease the hair just with my fingers, I can kind of get some sort of shape and movement going on, as opposed to everything being one length down to the base. So you can see there, you know, having this little break here along with this little break in the back, it kind of gives me a little bit of symmetry within the shape, which again, when I then put my hands into it, I can kind of show these little pieces off and add them as details. So even though it is kind of like a one length with a fringe and a couple of breaks, it looks much more interesting. And then obviously you can see with the colour, you know, we've got this super dark root which looks really cool. She was already blonde, obviously, so this was just the wash of the colour, just to kind of give us this kind of rose pinky hue. Now, the hair's been blow dried, so I used some of the volume and blow dry spray from Indola, also some of the strong mousse, and we just put that all the way into the hair, wrap dried it with like a flat paddle brush, sort of this backwards and forwards all the way through to keep that fringe nice and flat, okay? So it's important that you dry the fringe first, because any little areas through here that are quite jumpy around the hairlines, you know, you need to really tighten those in. So my recommendation would be to dry the fringe first to get that super flat. And then I pulled the product right the way through. I actually used like a kind of a large bristle brush in the end just to pull it through and seal it in. I wanted it to be kind of straight but have a little bit of movement for me to play with. So what I'm now going to do is utilise what I've got within the haircut and then kind of distort it and change it totally by putting in 2 ponytails. So again, I've got these details here, so I can kind of leave these out. As soon as I pull this up, you know, you're really going to change the kind of shape and dimension of Raimi's face. It's going to pull on her cheekbones. We have options here to kind of pull this back, incorporate it. What I might even do as well is actually put a little bit of product into this fringe and create a little bit of a kind of wet look in the fringe. So this is a super simple technique, but I just thought it'd be nice for me to kind of show you guys how to do it. So the first thing you need to do is we're going to put a ponytail into the back. We're going to do 2 separate ponytails. Now the key here is to make sure that the lines of the sectioning for the ponytails are setting up the shape that you want. So if you wanted the ponytail to sit here, for example, you know, I would work with a straight angle coming from behind the ear into here, put my pony, and then you'd have a straight section on the underneath where you'd put your pony into here. Or the other option is you can say, okay, well, let's have a look at Raimi's cheekbones. Let's see what's happening there, what angle they're sitting on, and then maybe we'll take a line on a more angular sort of structure, which will then make the pony slightly higher, and it will be a little bit more, well, a little bit stronger, I would say. So I want to kind of work along that basis. So if I section the hair just down the middle at the back, and then bear in mind the line that I want moving forwards into the front of the hair, okay, like so. So then when I look at it from here, I can kind of see that that line is pretty much running similar angle to the cheekbone. So we're going to do exactly the same, well, one on this side and one on the other side, and we're going to clip that out of the way for now. Grab a clip here, and we're just going to pop that into there. And we're going to do exactly the same on the other side. Okay. So we just check our balance, just to make sure we're happy with what's going on. Again, sometimes like imperfections make perfections, so if I see an area that's not quite right, actually, sometimes when you shoot that, it looks great because it's like a little break in the shape. Because you've got to remember, when you're doing more sort of session hair or fashion hair, which I'm sure some of you have kind of looked into and probably want to get into, because it's quite an exciting part of the hair community, you know, you really need to kind of think outside the box. And I think this is where breaking the rules comes in, because you know, whenever you're doing something in high fashion, you never want it to look like she's been to the salon. You know, so there's that element of understanding, are they a client that's paying for how they want it to look, or is it a model and a brand that's paying for a certain type of look? So you really have to be able to differentiate between the 2 channels of the sort of hair community. So what I'm going to do here is, first of all, I'm going to work with some of the flexible hold hairspray. Okay, now this is a great product, and to be honest, you should all have like a flexible hold hairspray in your kit, because they are the kind of make or break of any sort of styling, because the fact they're flexible means they brush out. Okay, so they're much sort of easier to kind of get rid of. If you're using strong hold, one, they go slightly wetter, so it can kind of fluff out the hair, and two, when you brush them out, they can be much more difficult to get out and also even flake a little bit. Okay, so the key here is to make sure that you're kind of spraying the hair very close. So you've got to remember, I almost want it to go slightly wet. So we don't want to be spraying from here just like a normal finish. You want to get it really quite close all the way into that area around the roots. So here now we use a dressing brush, and we start to just drag the hair into position. Now I'm putting the hair back. Now the reason I'm doing that is so that when she puts her head up, it becomes tighter, okay? So it's important that you sort of know those key little elements. So if you do this with the head up, then obviously as she, let me just turn you here, if I do that there and then she puts her head up or down, it becomes quite baggy. So you want to make sure that when you're putting the band in, that the head is just slightly further back, okay? So just using the dressing brush, and again, just thinking about where I want to position this ponytail. And also I want it to be a little bit kind of, you know, rough and distorted, hence why we've got the root, hence why we've got, you know, lots of products and spray in it, because it kind of makes it look a little bit grungier. Now, what I'm going to use to do this just for ease, normally if I'm on a show or on a shoot, I have like an assistant who will help me band it off, and we use like a normal elastic band. But in this case, I'm just going to use one of these, which are really great for you to kind of play with. They've just got hooks on either side, so if you're kind of on your own and you just want to band it off, you know, these are great just to push in, and then you use your fist or your finger to kind of keep it compressed against the head shape so that you can wrap it round without losing too much tension, so that it stays really, really tight. And you just keep dragging that right the way round until you end up just underneath, and then you can just hook that into position, okay? So there you have it. So it's nice and tight and it's locked in, and we don't need to worry about that going anywhere, okay? So straight away we've reduced quite a bit of weight to the hair, so all of a sudden now you've got this amount of hair. Now sometimes this can be really great for shooting as well. Just actually having a pony on the underneath kind of makes the hair look like there's less hair. Do you see what I mean? So even me just whacking a pony in there, it kind of gives me a little bit of a shape in the back. I can kind of manipulate the hair so that you can't really see that there's a pony in there. You see what I mean? So it was a quick way for me to remove a lot of weight from the base. So now all of a sudden her hair looks much finer, it looks looser, and it looks more broken. And that was literally just by putting in one ponytail on the underneath, just like that. Okay, so these can be really good. You can also, if you want, you know, you could wrap this into like a knot or a bun if you wanted to hide it even more. I find that if you leave it down, it kind of works, because, you know, the hair kind of falls into the underneath, so it becomes quite invisible. But that's a real key trick to being able to change the vibe and the amount of hair. So the next thing I'm going to do is now put my next ponytail in, and this is where we're going to start to get the drama, okay? Because now all of a sudden the whole face shape, the whole hair texture, the whole structure and feel of the hair is going to totally change. So what we do is we need to decide with the fringe. I think I'm going to leave it down, because, you know, I quite like the fact that that's kind of a more graphic shape through there. So we want to take all the hair, comb out the fringe. Now, a couple of options here, and these are the things that you kind of have to think about. Like, you've got choices, you know what I mean? So you can either put like a middle parting in here and bring the hair around the middle parting so that it comes into like a snatched pony with a middle parting. You can pull it all the way back. You could push in here a little bit of volume or shape if you wanted to. Again, there's options, and every one that you work on, you know, you might want to try a different feeling, because with this type of look, you can actually create, or with this technique or this idea, you can create very, very different shapes and textures. You know, if you had like a wave into here, for example, it would be totally different. If you went with gel and went wet look, would be totally different. So you've really got a few options to kind of consider. I think the nice thing about this is just thinking about the ponytail or working with double ponytails, and that then gives you freedom to kind of play around with some cool ideas. So what I'm going to do again is just with my flexible hairspray, just spray that quite close into the roots. And then we're going to go in with our brush now, just to kind of create that texture. Just pop your head back a little bit. That's it. Now here we've got some pieces of hair. You know, you can either spray those in or you can leave them out. I'm going to get it a little bit cleaner. So now think about the angle in which you want the hair to sort of come away from the face. Okay, so I want to see this line on the underneath. I think that's quite an important feature for me, so I need to keep this sort of lifted up and quite tight into the top. Brushing that all the way through, keeping my hand in position so that I've got like a bit of an anchor to sit the pony into. And again, just making sure both sides are kind of working. And just keep brushing it until you're kind of happy with the shape of what's going on. It feels clean. And then once you're in position, we then go back in with our bands. And then again with the band, we just lock that in, wrap it around the hair, keeping as much tension as you can. And just lock that in. Okay, so straight away, it's totally changed the kind of vibe and feel of the hair. And then this colour, which is kind of pulling through, you know, giving us this kind of really street grungy sort of vibe. And then working with the hairspray to kind of just get that feeling a little bit wetter. Yeah, so now I can just spray that in and brush that accordingly to get it to sit how I want it. Okay, so you can also see these little shorter pieces from the haircut which are kind of sitting in there as well. Now what you can do is you can hide, I mean I always quite like having visual bands. I think it adds a bit of a coolness to it. But again, you know, sometimes you want to take some hair from the underneath. You can hide those bands quite easily if you just take a small amount of hair and you can just wrap that around the band to give you like a really kind of cleaner sort of vibe. And then you can use some hairspray on there as well, just to seal that in, keep it nice and smooth. Again, just wrapping that right the way round. And then just with the ends, you can just push a grip. You know, it can be any grip, like, again, depending on, you know, what colour you want. And you just push that into the underneath. So then that gives you that nice, locked in, kind of tighter feeling and cleaner feeling, just by having hair around it as opposed to, you know, having it just visual. But again, it depends, you know, sometimes you want to see something a little bit more like graphic, and sometimes you want to see something a little bit more sort of pretty. So again, it's kind of up to you. So now what I want to do is kind of connect these two ponytails together, just to sort of fuse them in a little bit to make it a little bit more unusual. So the first thing I'm going to do is, with one more band, I'm going to connect this into the underneath. What we need to do is just brush this down into the ponytail on the underneath, and then what I'm going to do is just run this through here. Just pull that through to kind of lock these two together. Okay, so we're basically starting to create something slightly more unusual with a really kind of simple concept of working with ponytails. I think, you know, once you've got these sort of creative ideas and whatnot, you can really have fun with hair and get it doing what you want it to do. So the other thing that's really nice is to kind of utilise like material. So just tie that into there, and then what I can do is wrap this around, and then I can get rid of this band completely because I've already tied it off now with my... So it's really just a way to kind of keep the hair controlled for that moment in time. Just get that out. Just slide that underneath pony. And now we can just wrap that right the way around the hair as much as you kind of desire. Do you know what I mean? It's really just to give it a little bit of interest. But, you know, it's really, really good to kind of use different materials and products, especially when doing more creative work. So with this now, you know, there's a load of things I can do with it. You know, I can kind of feed it into the hair texture if I want, so you just see a little bit of detail running through the hair all the way round, and kind of have it just sort of hanging in there, you know, so it's not too in your face, but it kind of just shows a little bit of detail. So I don't really feel like it needs to be more than that, or you can hang it off totally. The other thing that we can do now is kind of pin this into the head shape just a little bit more to create a slightly more unusual sort of vibe through that back bit. Just, you know, it only needs to be a couple on the underneath, but you can kind of just pin a couple of sections into there just to flatten off that shape. Just on this underneath. And we just want to like distort this just a little bit. Okay, so, you know, you can see by doing all of this, all it basically does is kind of pull the hair away from the face to give us a much sort of like cleaner feeling through the front. So it's kind of totally transformed the feeling of the shape around her face. And now we've got this fringe. So this fringe again, you know, can be manipulated and moved to really transform it and just move it around a little bit. So I want to get some hairspray quite close into the fringe. Get this to kind of break and move. Get that product right in there just by using my brush straight away. We can kind of transform the feeling of shape that was there before. So just push that across. You can see, just detail it, make sure it sits nice and flat. You can also use the edges to kind of distort the hair in the hairline. When you have like this hair here, you know, you can sort of put the spray right into that just to detail it. Just getting it look a little bit shinier. Now, so you can see, you know, it's a totally different variation of where she was. You know, it looks like you wouldn't necessarily recognise her, especially in a shooting situation. I'm just going to use some of the serum now, just to give it a little bit more of a glaze through this ponytail. This is a bit more open, just to give us some texture. In the serum, you can really sort of work it into the hair. So that's pretty much just a really quick way for you to transform the shape and to give us kind of like a different feeling. So we can see how this shape kind of works, what's happening with these details, making sure we're happy with what's going on. Again, this as well, you know, once you've got this, you can kind of knot this in, create like a cool knot into this underneath here like this. Sometimes, you know, you kind of working with ideas, and you know, you think, oh, I actually quite like that. And even for me, just to put one or two pins in, it's kind of totally transformed it into something else. I love all of these little pieces that are kind of like starting to fan out. You see now, so it's totally transformed it within like a couple of seconds of me just standing her up. And then this will also now give me a little bit of interest on the outside. So if I'm shooting her and I want to shoot and I can see like some details through the back, you know, sometimes that's quite nice. Whereas with just doing a ponytail, obviously all the hair is down the bottom, so you can't see it. So there, for example, you can see, you know, you get these kind of cool broken textures. Okay, so you can see very, very unstructured, broken kind of vibe, you know, working with just two simple ponytails, and then me just putting my little creative spin on it to kind of let those ends drop out. You've got the little detail of some material being sort of dropped out of the bottom. You can see the high shine working with that flexible hairspray. The preparation of the fringe, obviously, where I've really blow dried it and nailed it right in from the start, means that by adding hairspray, I can just sit that in super tight. So a much cooler, more editorial vibe within 15-20 minutes. I hope you guys like it.
Wow, that looks amazing. Andy mentioned about the Crea Bold. They're actually in the PCC shade chart. They are a semi-permanent colour, although we put them in the shade chart just so that they're available, so you guys can see them, that they are available within the range, and they're here. These intense shades on this side of the shade chart here. They're totally. Andy used the two shades he used. The pastel lavender, the shade that he used is the shade within the range that we use to dilute the rest of the range. So the fuchsia pink mixed with the pastel lavender will dilute it to be used in a much kind of less intense effect. In fact, you can use the pastel lavender in all the shades to dilute them. It will dilute the intensity of them, but the one we used here was the fuchsia pink, diluted heavily with the pastel lavender. And over this young lady's hair, she's got a high level of porosity because it's previously coloured, but I still expect it to last somewhere between about 8 and 10 shampoos.
Just wanted to showcase something simple. It's 2 ponytails. But, try those, play around with them, twist the hair, have it down, have it up. You can try it with clear elastic bands. It's quite a nice way to get it together. As I said, normally I would use actual elastic and cut it, and I have someone that ties it off for me. But in this case, it was easier for me to use the claw, the hook type thing.
Yeah, perfect.
Because I'm doing it myself.
Well, thanks very much, Andy, for that. If you want to find out anything more about the Indola range, then hop over to the video channel, subscribe, hit that bell, and you'll get all the info, all the info as we release it.
Thank you so much,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you. Have a good
Bye
day.
now.